Good morning, Dan and Amy, and let's get right to it. One dumb trade policy from the Trump administration begets dumb trade policy by the Chinese, begets more dumb trade policy from the Trump administration. Trump announcing yesterday $50 billion worth of additional tariffs on some 1,300 Chinese products, and
including
China's responding in kind, and this will go on for a bit, it appears.
Yeah, and who's going to pay for it is the farmers, because there's a tariff on soybeans.
Well, who's going to pay for it is consumers of farm products and every other product that a tax has been imposed on, which is what a tariff is. Oh, by the way, so are those people in, say, the equity market, with the Dow futures down 500 points before the market opened today. Oof. I'm ecstatic about that. For more on this, please be joined again by Steve Moores, Wall Street Journal columnist, senior economist for CNN, and former Trump advisor. Steve, thanks for being with us.
Hi, guys. Good morning.
So it seems like the trade policy, the approach to trade, I should say, from a policy perspective, was more than saber rattling to try and get the Chinese to comply, to try and send a message to Mexico on NAFTA renegotiation. Trump is moving down the road of protectionist trade policy.
Well, look, I guess this is one of those few times I disagree with you. I completely applaud what Trump is doing with respect to China. China is a cheater. They steal. They have become a foreign policy menace. They are not an ally. They are an adversary and have become an enemy. And I guess my view, I think I share the view of most American people. What took us so long? We should have done this 20 years ago. And China has become a rogue nation. We can't have free trade, in my opinion, with a country that's stealing $350 billion of our technologies and our patents and our computer software and things of that nature. So I'm very much in favor of getting tough with China. And if China retaliates, then we should retaliate against them. I mean, look, my view is if we can't trade with China, we will sneeze. If they can't trade with us, they catch pneumonia. And Beijing, this is all on Beijing. We didn't start this, Dan and Amy. We didn't start this. They did. They started it by their behavior. And should we just, let me just ask one question to you guys. Should we just continue to allow China to act as they do and to steal from us and do nothing about it?
Well, is that the only country that's stealing from us?
No. There are a lot of other countries that do too. You're right, Amy. That's a good point. But China is the main villain here, and we have to go after some of these other countries as well. I mean, look, I'm all in favor of Steve Moore having free trade with Dan and Amy. You know, you provide me with radio service and commentary I like, and I'll provide you with my policy study. That's the way the market works. But it's not free trade if I'm stealing from you guys, and that's what China is doing. So
is this the only way
I'm putting out a serious question for you, Dan. What do we do in response to what China is doing to us?
Is this the only way we can prevent theft?
Well, that's a good question too. I mean, that's a fair question. Now my buddy Art Laffer, who's my mentor, says is with you on this. He says you never impose tariffs because you're just harming the American consumer. And there's something to that. I mean, I think there are two sides to this story. But what? So what do you have in mind? If we're not going to use trade as a weapon, what are we going to use as a weapon with respect to China?
Well, I mean, part of this is with respect to, is this a government policy problem or is this a private sector problem with respect to protecting intellectual property?
Well, it is partly a private, but isn't the role of our government to make sure that that countries aren't stealing from American companies and so on? I mean, look, these are all good questions, but I think to just simply say, well, Trump is starting a trade war here. No, the people who started this trade war are the people in China. Beijing has done this. They have all sorts of non-tariff trade barriers against the United States, and then we say we have free trade with them. We buy their products. They don't buy they put all sorts of restraints. I've talked to a lot of CEOs of major companies who say you can't do business in China. They put so many restraints on our ability to export to them, and we're not doing that. You know, we don't do that to them, but they do that to us. So, I'm frustrated with China.
How do you explain the steel and aluminum tariffs hitting Japan?
Well, that's a great point. I am not in favor of it. So that's where you guys and I are in complete. In fact, now is not the time to be putting any tariffs on any of our allies. We need a unified front against China. China is not part of the civilized world right now. They're like the Soviet Union. I mean, they just elected they're not democratic. Their president is going to be president for life. They're the ones who facilitated and enabled the North Koreans to have a nuclear bomb. Now, look, if I was living next to you guys and I gave the lunatic down the street a submachine gun, would you think I was a friend of yours?
No.
No, you would not be.
Well, that's what China has done.
All right, so China slapped 25% tariffs on 106 items, including cars, planes, and soybeans. So eventually that's going to trickle down to us, the consumers. So whereas I'm saving money or getting more money back in my paycheck, now I'm going to have to spend it and use it elsewhere. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, this is a high stakes showdown, and I think Trump is basically the Trump kind of theory on trade, which is different from the kind of Milton Friedman free trade idea, is we have leverage over China because they need us so much more than we need them. So if they want to bring this on, it's going to cripple their economy. It will hurt some American farmers. It will hurt us as consumers, but it will kill them. They can't. How can China possibly function as a nation if they don't have access to America's $10 trillion consumer market? They can't. So, if I were advising Beijing, I'd say, look, you better not. You don't want a tit for tat trade war here because you can't win this. You're going to get killed if you do this. And Trump is not. I've been around Trump a lot, as you guys know, for the last 2 years. This is a counterpuncher. He's not a guy who stands down. If China thinks somehow by slapping tariffs on our soybeans that somehow, we're going to relent. I just don't see that from this administration.
So you think the strategy is that to do this to exacerbate China's internal contradictions and put economic pressure on a regime that may not be seen as legitimate by large swaths of the population?
Yeah, I do. I think, now look, whether China stands down here or not, I don't know the answer to that. But if Beijing and Xi thinks that somehow they're going to continue to put tariffs on us, I mean, we can survive. We could survive without. Look, it means that if you go to the WalMarts now, instead of paying $1.29 for toothpaste, you might have to pay $139 or something like that. It may mean that the cell phone you buy, is going to, instead of being $129, might be $139. So yeah, we'll impose a cost on consumers. And I just go back to the question of, well, are we just going to sit back and let China misbehave and do nothing about it year after year after year? Because if you do that, you let a tyrant get bigger and stronger over time.
And so then the other thing we'll not hear is Trump ballyhooing the performance of the stock market. So that'll be by the boards. We won't hear him taking credit for the Dow Jones Industrial Average, will we?
Well, look, I am in favor of what Trump is doing in China. I'm not in favor of the steel tariffs. We've talked about this for the last several weeks on the show. I think the steel tariffs were stupid, and they do harm consumers, and they don't actually create, jobs for Americans because we lose probably more jobs with those tariffs than we gain. I will also say, guys, the other big economic story is what Trump is doing to Amazon, and I think that's ridiculous. It's outrageous, and I think that this idea. By the way, the dumbest thing is the White House saying that somehow Amazon is hurting the Postal Service. I mean, my God, there is no Postal Service if there's not Amazon, right?
Right, but he's also saying they aren't paying taxes, and that all changed. Did anybody tell President Trump that?
Well, there is some that look on this issue of whether they pay Amazon
the last
pays
mile.
Yeah, that stuff. I mean, look, that's a dispute. I happen to side with Amazon on that, but there is a credible counter argument to that. On the issue of what was the one you just brought up, Amy?
Whether or not Amazon pays
sales taxes.
Yeah.
Oh, whether they pay taxes, right. I've always been very much against this idea that the online, companies, if they don't have a physical presence in a place, shouldn't be responsible for collecting the sales tax. Now, they do collect. I'm not an expert on this. I do believe, guys, that they pay state sales taxes. I think what's the issue here is whether they pick up the local sales taxes. And, there's an honest disagreement about whether Amazon should have to collect the city sales tax in Chicago. I mean, if they don't have a presence there, I think they do. But if they don't, I don't think they should have to.
This is so interesting because, of course, Trump is generating some qualified plaudits from the left, like David Dian.
I know.
Writing in the New Republic, and he's getting hammered by conservatives and free marketeers like you and me and Rich Lowry. What's that?
What did the new? I didn't see what the New Republic said.
The New Republic basically said, we don't like. I mean, we didn't mind. They don't say this, but we didn't mind when Obama would mow and pick out particular companies or individuals to lambaste and use the power of the federal government and the presidency to do that.
Right.
But we don't like when Trump's doing it. Number one, but number two, we don't have any sympathy for Amazon because Amazon is a free rider and Amazon is this and Amazon is that. So, for the left, their Trump hatred is running into their hatred of big corporations.
Yeah. Here's the big point here. We do not want the use of the awesome power of government, the $4 trillion budget, the regulatory state, the fact that they can impose all kinds of penalties on companies. We don't want, our president or the Congress bullying American companies. And that's, you've seen how much is their stock drop by $60-70 billion just because Trump put out a tweet attacking them. I mean, that is a misuse of government power. I think we all as free marketeers can agree on that.
I agree yes, I do agree on that. Let me ask you something else about the market yesterday, just because this was rather interesting. Spotify IPO'd yesterday, but it did so with a direct listing rather than employing investment banks, essentially. And this could be a way to marginalize some of the big banks on Wall Street if companies like Spotify can do these direct listing IPOs, which that may be a positive development, may it not?
Oh, hugely positive to shareholders. Absolutely. Why should investment banks take a big slice out of this, right? I mean, this is exactly what's happening in the new economy. Is what you're doing here, and I love this story. Is you're getting rid of the middleman.
Yeah.
Right. And that means who benefits from that? The shareholders. So absolutely, I love this.
All right, so we just need
to. My investment banker friends may not be too happy about that, but look, this benefits the consumers and the shareholders. Yep. That's all of us, right? Do you disagree with me on that?
I think it's positive too. That's why I wanted to make sure we drew attention to it and get your reaction to it.
Most things, you and I and Amy are on the same page.
except
But we got to get tough with the Chinese.
All right, so
as long if it gets results. But I go shopping twice a week, and for me, that's a big jump in.
She likes her knockoff Dolce and Gabbana clothes.
What's that?
Steve Moore, Wall Street Journal columnist, senior economist for CNN. Steve, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Have a great morning, guys. See you. Take care.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about